Next stop for the Canadians is Houston, Texas, and their opponent is a familiar one. Once again, it's Canada versus Morocco at a World Cup, but this time it's in the round of 16. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Bet365 for the win. A beautiful home for the beautiful game. Annie Petrullo, Oliver Platt, Amy Walsh with you. Christian Jack's going to be joining us a little later on in the show. He has Joshua Cloak with him. We're also going to hear from Kyle Becker, former national team player. And as we know, he is a stalwart in the CPL with Forge FC. He is a champion. He's going to give us his thoughts on Stefan Eustáquio and perhaps what he thinks Canada should do against Morocco. So this was the game we were all watching last night, Netherlands, Morocco. This was going to be the opponent, and no goal until the 72nd minute. Gakpo would get that for Netherlands, put the Dutch up 1-0. But then in the 90+1, Diop would tie things up for Morocco. This one would go the distance, everybody. It would go to penalties. And here is a crazy stat. You just saw him right there. Goalkeeper for Morocco, Yassine Bounou. Only 4 of the last 12 penalties against him have actually been converted. He has saved 5 of them. 3 of them have been off the mark. So great goalkeeping there as well. So yeah, it's Canada, Morocco, Saturday, July 4th, 1 p.m. ET. Our show will follow that at 5 Eastern. We'll have some post-game reaction. But we also know that Canada's head coach, Jesse Marsch, after that game as well, that win in South Africa, he's like, I'm making my way to that game. I'm going to go watch Netherlands, Morocco live. So Amy, how do you think Jesse Marsch is feeling after watching that, watching the intensity of Morocco as well, staying in it right until the very end, pulling off the win? Do you think Marsch's anxiety is a little high right now?
I think it was probably exactly as he expected. Anxiety, maybe a little bit more, but I think he saw in person a team that was high quality. They were dominant. They had control of the match, especially when the Dutch decided to sit back. But the good thing, and what Jesse Marsch is feeling very high on, is the fact that this match went to 120 minutes, extra time, and then into penalties. So that's physically and mentally demanding. But to your question about Canada, can they match this intensity that we saw in the round of 32 match, which could have very well been a semifinal in any other World Cup? That's what it offered. But I think Canada can. But can they match their quality? And can Canada sustain that type of intensity? That's a little bit different. So, but the principles that we saw with Morocco and this intensive, aggressive style are akin to the foundational tenets of Marsch's very own system: athletic, aggressive, physical, pacey. And the Dutch figured it out with a really combative approach until they sat back, as I mentioned, and allowed Morocco to dictate completely. But I think inspiration might also lie in like the caginess, the cynicism that we saw with Paraguay slaying a giant versus Germany. But the reality of this fixture, and Ollie, you can speak to this as well, it's a knockout match. Anything can happen in knockout football. And with everything on the line, can Canada be suffocating and aggressive, but also belligerent and organized, and absorb that pressure, gain power, and then apply it and pick their spots, be it pressure or going quick and vertical on the counterattack? I think that's where the keys to the match lie.
Yeah, I agree with that. And Canada, look, they've got a chance. They're here for a reason. You certainly don't write them off. But I think this is going to be an incredibly difficult game. Like, I love this Morocco team. I won't love them on Saturday, but the rest of the time, I've really enjoyed watching them at this tournament. And I think if they do get the edge over Canada, you know, in this game, obviously you'd expect them to play France next, which will be a massive test, but you wouldn't rule them out. I think they're that good. This may not be like a traditional powerhouse, obviously, that's won a World Cup or been deep on many occasions before 2022. But now that this is a top 10 team in the world for me, I don't think there's much doubt about that with the quality they've got at all positions. Like Amy touched on, they're fast, they're athletic, but they've also got some brilliant technical players, you know, players who are crafty in tight spaces, more powerful players in open spaces with great quality, you know, striking the ball. Defensively, they're strong. You know, they've got dynamic players from every single position. They're deep. This is going to be, you know, maybe not quite as tough as it can get at the World Cup, because that's France, that's Argentina still, but it's not far off. Like, I think people need to really understand how good this Morocco team is. So just a massive task in front of Canada this weekend.
Well, somebody who saw this growth even with them on the world stage, I remember coming out of the World Cup 2022, was John Herdman. And he said the Canadian national team, if anything, he wanted them to aspire to be like Morocco. And he pointed to their World Cups in the past where they too struggled, either didn't qualify, couldn't get out of the group, but use that experience to their advantage, create their identity. And then, of course, as we know, 2022, fourth place. And here they are once again, round of 16. So having said that, how do you even approach this, Ollie, against a team like Morocco? Do you just continue playing Marsh ball? Does he have to make any kind of tactical adjustments with other teams that we've also seen so far in this World Cup doing that when they know they're going up against a powerhouse?
Yeah, honestly, I think to a certain extent they have to manage this game. They have to try and slow it down in moments. I know that's not Canada's natural inclination, but I think right now if Canada tries to get into a track meet with these guys, I don't think they're going to have a good day. I think they could find it really difficult. And maybe if you're talking about a full strength Canadian team, you could try and play that way and go toe-to-toe with them. If you've got a fully fit Alphonso Davies, a fully fit Moise Bombito, Ismail Kone, that's a different story, but they're just not in that place right now. They're not in that situation with those key players. A couple of them may be able to play some part in this game, but we know even that is limited. And I think that has to change your approach. And I think it has changed Jesse Marsh's approach a little bit in this tournament already outside of the Qatar game. I think he's had to kind of pick his moments a bit more and be a bit more pragmatic. And I'd expect the same here. Like I said previously, I do think Canada's a major underdog. And so this game at times is going to be about surviving, staying in it, and trying to find your moments to punch.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Like if Ollie, you saying if they try to get into a track meet with Morocco, they're going to lose and might also be embarrassed. I don't think that's the approach that they're taking. It's not foundational to how they're approaching this match. But I would just like to say, over the course of this World Cup, throughout the group stage, and then even in the round of 32 match versus South Africa, they've made history, but have we seen the true identity of this team? Like up until he made substitutions, like maybe the first 70 minutes versus South Africa, if somebody was watching, we know all the eyeballs were on this game because it was the lone match in this World Cup. Would anyone have been able to tell what Jesse Marsh's style of play was? What is Marsh ball? What is maple pressing? Did we really see it? You saw it. You mentioned it, Ollie, versus Qatar, but I think that's an outlier. So you need a heavy dose of pragmatism when you're entering this match, but also a check-in and a return to that identity. And you need much more quality on the ball and the speed of play. You saw that in the moments that Canada had versus South Africa, where you found the space between the lines, you found that vertical pass, but then it was the first touch that was letting them down, or maybe the choice of footwear on that SoFi turf, but the ball was stuck under their feet, whether it was Liam Miller or Jonathan David. So, and also the tweaks. Talks of a back five at halftime versus the Swiss. Do we utilize the players that we have on the bench, like Nico Segur, who made a cameo, played half an hour for Canada, allowed Eustáquio to get a little bit further up the pitch? A player like him, and Ollie, we are talking about it, might allow somebody or more numbers into that midfield, or might allow Canada to have a little bit of a switch, maybe around the hour mark, or one of these famous hydration breaks, where you switch to a little bit of a back five, whether it's Alistair Johnson, who stays wide, Nico Segur drops into the midfield, or he just slides into a little bit of a back three in a wing back system, and then you settle into a really robust, hard to penetrate back five, and you're even more difficult to break down at that point. So I don't think you need to stray too far from what has brought you success over the 2 years under Marsh, but clearly there are some tweaks that you have to make when you know you're facing such a formidable opponent like Morocco.
And I think that's another reason why Jesse Marsh gets asked about that a lot, because I don't think we've really seen a lot of tweaks either in the past, which I think when Jesse Marsh had said five at the back against Switzerland, everyone kind of went, well, how often do you do that? Like, it was just a little strange. We don't see it. So yes, you want to be true to your identity, but you also want to adjust to the opponent, because while Canada has so much momentum, they truly do. Inspiration, as we mentioned, all of these history things that they're check marking. Morocco have lost just 2 matches in their last 57. They're on a 32 unbeaten streak. That's just to put some things into perspective here. But let's look back a little bit, right? 2022, when they faced Morocco group stage, there was a little bit of, oh no, because Morocco did strike in the 4th minute. They got the goal. Ended up going up 2-0, but Sam Adekugbe Gabby ended up forcing an own goal just before half, so it was 2-1. And then Atiba Hutchinson had this brilliant header off a corner that goes off the crossbar. Looked like a moment that, they were going to tie things up here in Canada. At that time, we're looking for their first ever point at the World Cup. 59% was the possession for the Canadians in that game, Amy. So despite the loss, when you look at the scoreline, when you look at the fact that, Canada did possess a lot of the ball, unfortunately, of their 5 shots, not one was on target. But do you take some of these metrics and go, hold on a second, they're also better than they were 4 years ago, and they can probably hang here a little bit better?
Yeah, the last 2 things in your sentence, not the first. Like, I think they've really improved, but I'm not relying on the metrics from 4 years ago because Canada has evolved so much. There's only 5 starters from that team that remain with Jesse Marsh's squad at this year's World Cup. And Morocco have evolved leaps and bounds from a dark horse back then to, as Ollie alluded to one of the heavyweights in world football that other teams have to contend with. But I think what you can pull from that is the goals conceded was an absolute howler from Borjan. It was a giveaway on the first, and the other one was a ball over the top. So we've improved with our depth, as well as the pace at the back and the cover that a burner like Moise Bombito will be able to provide. And I think that Canada can be inspired by the way that Morocco played back then, where they were willing and able to control games without the ball. So that's part of the success, I think, versus this really tough Moroccan side, is understand what you're about, what's in front of you, eyes wide open, and then try to control the match when you're out of possession and hit them on the break and try to find those gaps, whether it's mental or actual seams in a back line that you can exploit.
Yeah, that's a good point. They might actually learn more from Morocco from themselves in terms of their approach at that time. Like, it again, I think people need to understand this is a completely different Morocco team from 4 years ago. As good as a tournament as that was for them going to the semi-finals, they might not get back there this time because, again, they're probably going to have to go through France. But this is a much more talented team. Like, particularly going forward, there's far more in terms of attacking weapons, difference makers. That was a team that really ground its way through the tournament and took a couple of big upsets on the way by playing in that fashion. Let's hope Canada can take something from that. But Morocco as a team, and they even though they were 2-0 up in 20 minutes or so in that game, I think they're a much more dangerous opposition this time around.